mic. I had forgotten what I wrote about the title of my talk, so thank you for reminding me. I'm honored and glad to be here, share some words with you coming out of my own practice. And it's always a joy to reconnect. And as we were walking earlier, I just stopped to greet Brother Chising over there, who was a great friend, and he still is. And also to give honor to the teacher that we all honor, Thich Nhat Hanh, or Thai, for those who knew him. And I'm really so glad and grateful to be part of this Sangha. Although I don't join your meditations, I follow up on your sittings. We also have our place in East Dallas called the Maria Kannon Zen Center. So we are all relatives in that regard. We're all cousins. We're all kin in that regard. Part of that Sangha that Mike had mentioned on the different levels. And we feel a special kinship in that we follow the same practice that comes from the Buddha himself. And so that's where I'd like to begin. When the Buddha, the awakened one, came out of his seat wherein he awakened to that which he had been seeking for all his life at that point. He was in his mid-30s. He started his spiritual journey when he was 29, although of course there were already rumblings in his inner heart, even early on, even when he was a teen perhaps, but he could not actually, he did not take the step of formally going forth into the spiritual life until he was about 29 years old, when he had everything in place. And so for 6 years, he sought and asked many teachers for guidance. And finally, he realized he could not really receive any guidance from any one of the existing teachers at the time. So he resolved that I will just sit here until my heart comes upon that realization of that which it's been longing for. The answers to the big questions. Who am I? Why am I here? And what's the point of my life? And how can I live my life so that at the point of my death, I will know that it has been a meaningful and full, and one that is full of joy and full of gratitude. How can I live that kind of life? And those of you who are here, and also those who are online, I gather, would have some similar questions and rumblings in your life. And that's what brings you to this practice. How can I live my life in a way that I will truly find my heart's longing, that inner peace, quiet joy, a sense of gratitude for being alive, so that at the point of death, when we are about to leave this biological life, we will be able to look back and say, it's been a good ride. I'm grateful for everything. How can we live that kind of life? In short, to use Buddhist terms, how can we live an awakened kind of life? So as the Buddha went forth from his seat, full of compassion, because he knew that there were people in the world who were still confused about their life and who were still mired in their delusion and in their karmic baggage that caused a lot of suffering. He resolved to just live among the people and share whatever he could of that light that he had received in that moment of awakening. So when he was mingling with the people, naturally people noticed something in him. They noticed his equanimity, his quiet joy, his sense of groundedness, and his heart that was open to everyone, so that everyone who approached him felt a sense of kinship. They felt that they had a place in his heart. He had such a big heart that anyone who approached him found that they could really be embraced by him and know that he was their friend. So they asked him, "Sir, how can we be like you? What are you?" Well, his answer was, "I'm just an ordinary human being like you, but I awakened, I awoke, I'm awakened. So then they asked him, what does it mean to be awakened? Please, sir, teach us also how to be awakened ourselves so that we can be like you. And so that's where the tradition known as Buddhism began, when the awakened one offered words to point to others the way of being awakened. And that's what we know as the Dharma, that which he himself realized in his moment of awakening, which then became ingrained in his own being and which he realized more and more deeply throughout for the rest of his life. The Dharma is what he was now imparting to others around him. So we have so many words, and the corpus of Buddhist scriptures are compiled in several volumes, both in the early Buddhist scriptures in Pali, and then later on in Mahayana, in Sanskrit, translated into Chinese, and so on. But at the heart of what he was saying in response to those who asked him, sir, how can we be awakened like you? There were two words that stood out. The first word was, stop your mind from all of its activities, from all of its comparisons, from all of its analysis, from all of its unease and anxious seeking of something that you don't know what it is, and yet you keep seeking, and just let it rest. Let that mind be still. The word in Pali that corresponds to that is shamatha. That's also the same in Sanskrit, spelled differently, but it's basically stop your busy mind from going around and looking for something other than yourself, and just let it come home to where you are and just taste your being. I'm using words to paraphrase that, but it's basically shamatha. And that's the basic word that is also used in the practice that derives from early Buddhism, from the Theravada monks, which is also what Thai also inherited, although he also inherited the Mahayana Zen tradition. But it's basically an invitation to let the mind be at rest. For those of you who come from the Christian tradition and who have not been allergized by it because of certain unfortunate things that you may have experienced in that community, but still are open to hearing from it, there is a psalm in the scriptures, Psalm 46, that goes, be still and know that I am God. Now, let's bracket the term God for the moment, but the invitation to be still is the same that is given to the Jewish community as well as the Christians who inherited the scriptures and then made some new ones in the New Testament. So basically, it's an invitation, the same invitation that the Buddha was inviting his followers. Just allow your mind to be still and let it settle where you are. And the second word that comes out of the many, many discourses of the Buddha is the word vipassana, which basically means see through things in a way that sets aside all obstructions and see things clearly just as they are. So if your heart and mind is, I'm using it in a singular because heart, mind are two English words that are used in translation of the Chinese, Japanese word shin, the core of our being. If that core of your being is still anxious and ill at ease, then just look at it and just allow it to just stop from all of its activities and just let it be still. Let that heart and mind of yours just come home to where you are, here and now, and let it be still. Shamatha. And at that moment, when you really arrive at that stillness, you will know that you are home. And in being at home, then your eyes will be opened to see. To see what? Here, where we can only use words to try to point out things that you can only try and experience for yourself. See what? And the word that is used is to see things as they are. The Pali word there is yatha bhutam, to see things in the way they are and not from your subject-object perspective that always colors you, that always gives you a slant, that always gives you a one-sided point of view. And there are others who see the same thing and they have their points of view. And because of our different points of view, we quarrel about which one is correct. And that's where the world is right now. We're quarreling about basic things. This country is divided, right, at the center with different perspectives on same phenomena that happened. And so the Buddha's invitation is to see things just as they are, without the obstruction of your subjective ego, without your putting anything into them, but let them speak for themselves and arise as they are. Shamatha, vipassana. And that's also what the Zen tradition inherited. So without using those words, what I have learned in my own Zen practice, and it's been maybe when I was still in my early 20s, and I'm in my diamond years now, in my 70s. So around 50 years or so since I began this practice of Zen, I have come to learn that really coming home to where one is not isolating ourselves from others. We're here in this hall, apparently secluded from the rest of the world with all of its cacophony, with all of its traffic, with all of its conflicts and so on. And we're seeking a haven of inner peace here. But that doesn't mean that we're escaping from the world. We are entering into the depths of our own being so that we can truly see who we are and where we belong. And in realizing that, we arrive at that peace that the Buddha realized. That's the key aspiration that we all chanted earlier. May all beings be at peace. May all arrive at that place of peace where everyone is celebrating everyone else's being, and we are all rejoicing that we are here, that I am here with you and we are together. And that's what brings that inner peace, that equanimity that allows it to gush forth in loving kindness and compassion and sympathetic joy. That's what we just recited. And so in that regard, the Zen way of guiding people would be take a posture conducive to stillness. And that's what we are actually doing. You are seated in a way that you are allowing your mind and heart and your whole being to be still right here where you are seated. And in that stillness, we find our place here in a way that is grounded. It's not just sitting though. We also engage in a slow walk, which is also part of that kind of posture that's conducive to stillness. If you were really paying attention while you were walking with every step, you would have noticed that each time we stepped, our foot was touching the floor. And this floor is made of wood. And you might have wondered where this wood come from. Or maybe you didn't wonder about that, but anyway, it's wood. And this wood came from some tree somewhere, could have been from some tree in the Amazon that was logged, and then it was brought over, and then it was constructed into this very particular flooring that we now are stepping on. So that itself gives us a very, very immediate connectedness with wherever that tree was. And since we cannot pinpoint exactly where it is, it could have been anywhere, some tree in Indonesia or some tree in the great Northwest. All the trees in the world then are part of what connects us here and what allows us to be Sangha. And if you look at where those trees are planted, the earth, and that earth is this whole wide earth in which all manner of sentient beings, tens of thousands and millions of various little organisms and big ones also, including human beings, are living. And so if you are attentive and if you have allowed your mind to be stopped at that moment, all of that will open and you realize, I belong. I'm a part of this community of sentient beings in all sorts of situations. Some are suffering right now, being threatened by the bombs in Ukraine. Some are still suffering because their relatives are caught in the debris in those buildings that collapsed in Turkey. Some are rejoicing because there's a newborn baby. Some are rejoicing because the person that they love in their heart just accepted their invitation to marry them. There are different kinds of joys and sorrows that all beings are now undergoing. And in their way, and as we know that they are, we can't list them all. We know that that's also us. That joy, that pain, that sorrow, that all sentient beings, including human, of course, are feeling right now are part of who I am. Lisa read something earlier that exactly corresponded to that.
Contemplation.
Yes, the content. Thank you. The contemplation that Lisa read points to that exactly. Let the whole Sangha breathe as one body, generate peace as one body, be free as one body. That one body that is being referred to here is this very body that keeps you as an individual who you are, but also the very body that includes the floor, the earth, the trees, the mountains, the dogs, the cats, all the wild animals in the forest, all the trees. That one body that is the universe. May we all breathe as one body. Let us transcend the boundaries of our delusive self. We think that we are the center of the universe, with our egoic self always being the CEO of your life. But this practice is precisely what enables us to dislodge that delusive CEO and allow this one body. Another chant talks about the light that shines through all, including all religions. So whatever is true, whatever is good, whatever is holy, it's coming, emanating out of that same light that we have access to when we come home to that place where we are affirmed right here, right now, and we realize we are one body. Transcending the boundaries of this delusive self, liberating ourselves from the superiority complex, inferiority complex, and the equality complex, because that's all based on myself as opposed to others. Am I equal to them? Am I better than them? Am I less than them? So we're always worried about this little egoic self and its place in the universe. But when we arrive at that place where all is still, we know that we are home, and we know that we belong. Just as I am, in the very individual being that I am, warts and all, as they say, I belong, I'm okay. And so with that, I can accept each and everyone else as okay as they are, because they're also part of me. I am them. I continue to practice in the Christian tradition, by the way, and this morning I went to the Eucharist, the Catholic Mass. And so the key part of the Mass is, of course, the Eucharistic communion, where we go up and receive the bread that was just consecrated. And we know from our Catholic faith that that is the bread, that is the body of the living God through Jesus Christ, that Christ proclaimed. So in taking that little piece of bread and chewing it and then allowing it to enter into my whole being, I'm opening myself up to that body, the body of Christ, the universal Christ. For those of you who may come from the Christian tradition and you're kind of wondering what should I do with this and so on, there's a book by Father Richard Rohr called The Universal Christ. That might give you a hint that Christianity is not what you think it is. It's not that exclusive, fundamentalist, judgmental kind of attitude at all that many unfortunately tend to manifest. But it's really much bigger than that and liberated from all that. It's good news. So what's that good news? That we all belong. And so as I was sitting there, having taken my share, knew that I belonged, and all of the other people who were in line receiving it, I felt, I'm this person, this burly person who is now receiving his share, and then this petite young lady who is there, and then there's this mother carrying her child. Each and every one of them was me. Or rather, I put it in this way, I somehow entered into their lives and felt responsible for them because they're me. Because I'm no longer just this little egoic self called Ruben Habito, but as I see myself in each and every one of those who also receive the same body, hey, I'm you and you are me. So let's celebrate. But it's hard to say that in polite company. People will think you're crazy. And maybe we are, in a sense. We have to be really unconventional to be able to really express and articulate what goes on in this practice. I could use much more time and few more words, but since my time is limited, let me just round up what I am trying to invite everyone else to taste for yourself. Please consider this practice as an invitation to really come home to who you are in the most intimate way that you can be yourself by simply taking that posture conducive to stillness, breathing with attention. So let your mind keep coming back to the breath. When you're sitting there and somehow your mind is free to just wander around, that's what happens. Oh, what shall I have for dinner tonight? Or my schedule next week, I haven't figured out what about this appointment on Tuesday and so on. All of these come out. Or maybe I shouldn't have said that thing to this other person and so on. Memories about the past come, and so we just tend to fritter away the time when we're sitting here. But the practice invites us to see through that. Oh, there I go again. Just laugh at yourself. Don't judge yourself. Just allow that to be noticed and let it go like clouds. The image we use, and which I've heard in our Zen tradition, is that you're invited to be like a mountain, stolid and there, grounded, connected to all the mountains, connected to the whole earth, carrying the whole earth, in fact. And those things that are letting your mind float away are like clouds. So let them come and you see them, oh, okay, then they'll let them just go and come back to your base as a mountain right here, right now. And you're okay. And so with that, your heart is open. And so as our hearts are opened, we will be given that glimpse of these little connections that can really transform our life. So when we meet others, we will no longer see them as others, but somehow we will have a sense of kinship with each and everyone, no matter how different they may look like, no matter how different they may think like. Somehow, deep in our hearts, we know we are kin. So let's work it out. So that's the invitation that this practice opens to us, to open our heart, not as a moral injunction, let's open our hearts and so on. It naturally opens our heart. If we have really arrived at that place where we can be at home and we know we belong. So I belong, and therefore you belong also, and we all belong together. So let's celebrate. That's the kind of heart that this practice tends to cultivate in us. And if we could do this, and if the circle of those who practice in this way widens and widens, including all of those corporate leaders and political leaders, what a different world this would be. So let's continue to move in that direction, beginning with ourselves. And as they say, let the light shine, not in a kind of a condescending way saying, see, I have the light and you don't, but in a humble way like the Buddha, just being there with the people and from his heart, holding the people in his heart. And when the opportunity arises to offer a word that might just make the difference in their lives and lead to that light shining forth in greater brilliance in the world. So we have a mission. Your mission, should you decide to accept it, is to live your life to the full by coming home to yourself and know that that's infinitely precious and good. And that's your contribution to the world by being yourself, the joyful, peaceful, happy self that you can be. And once you reach there, you'll know that you can't keep that to yourself. You can only live in a way that your heart is now open to the world, and the rest will be the particulars of how you work that out. I wish us all a pleasant and joyful journey. May there be little suffering, but if there comes suffering, may we be able to see through them and overcome them with a heart of equanimity and loving kindness and compassion. And may we all together live with peace, with joy, and with gratitude for having been born on this earth, and carry out what this life of ours is inviting us to do, namely to share the light that we have received with all that we meet. Thank you. I believe there's some time for questions.